Sound chicken. Right, all good. Oh, I haven't even opened my model yet. Right, so I'm obviously getting back to the Cybertech 9mm Vindicator model. This one's actually going to be a bit different to a couple of the last streams. So I know I said I was going to stream the entire build, but then I didn't. I did a little bit whilst I was not streaming, and then that turned into a lot whilst I was not streaming, and now the majority is done. But there's still a fair bit to do that's going to be quite interesting, and this one is going to be a good one because it's going to be the I really need to add this curve in, but I'll do that afterwards. I'm going to add in some of the inner components that are going to make some of the stuff work, which is why I say it's going to be a good one, because it's going to be a case of cutting this thing in half and figuring out how everything goes together so that when this slide is in use at the back here, so it's in the chamber, so there's this piece which basically comes out and looks cool and goes back in. So I need it to come out, lock. When it's locked outwards, I can't really see an issue. When it's locked outwards, then pulling the trigger will allow it to snap back. Oop. So obviously there's going to be a part where springs have got to attach. There's got to be a way of the trigger pull releasing this to fall down again, which I've already figured out, and I think I've just figured out another part. Also underneath where this piece pops out, there is a tray type housing there. That's where the bullet goes. So I need to consider that needs to kind of maintain as well. But it might mean that I need to put an extra piece around here. Hello, freestyle dancing. That's very nice.
You're welcome.
Right. Careful. So, first thing I'm going to do is cut the gun in half. Or this piece of it at least. So it's the chamber main here. So split the body, this body, and this thing tool straight down the middle. I've got one side closer to me, and that's the opposite side. Right, so here's the inside, which shows you kind of the space and the inner workings that I have to play with currently. It's worth noting that on the other side of this rear, it does go further down. That may well be a thing that ends up having to change. So the trigger's going to go here. When I actually create this as two pieces as well, they're actually going to be two halves. So this will be a left and a right, that you put all the inner workings inside, and then you put the two halves together. It's pretty much the only way that all this can be allowed to work. So how I'm envisaging it is that there will be a spring here, which you put in, which pushes constantly upwards here into where this top rail is. When you pull it backwards, there'll be a part that catches on the thing being pushed up by the spring, which will be like a bar that goes across here on a pivot point. And then when you squeeze the trigger, it'll push this side of the bar up, pulling the other side down and allowing the release to happen. The one thing I've got to consider is that how far out do I want the thing to pull? Is my gun here? No, I've got reference images. I know how far out it's supposed to go. Fine, look. So I use the step through one frame at a time thing to get this. So it stops when the inner part of the slide is just about to come out the back. So if I move this to roughly where I think it will stop, it should be about there. So let's say 25 millimeters is as far as it moves. That's the point then at which the catch has to happen. The reason this is cut away like this is because this at its current point here has to be allowed to move up and down, and I think I actually need to cut away a bit more of this to make this actually thinner so that it's got a little bit of flex. Usually when you have a gun that has a slide across the top, when you pull the whole lot back, this piece drops down. And if you look at how does a pistol work, there are a few really good GIFs about it. That is the picture, but it's not animating. So this is actually really useful. See there, so this is the piece that I'm on about. Usually that slides down, and that slides down because when you pull the entire chamber back, there's a little piece here that grabs it and pulls it downwards. The problem is with this design is that you just pull the back piece down, out here, so subsequently there's nothing to catch to pull this front piece down. So how do you do it? And the way I've envisaged it working is because it's going to be plastic and not metal, it should have a tiny bit of sway. So there's basically a ramp, as it were, here, and there's one here as well. And I was hoping that there would be enough give in order to pull this front bit down so it comes underneath. The reason I want to do that and not have it straight is that this front piece, when I put it back to its original spot, no, it was supposed to be 25, not 35. When it's there, if you don't have it up, it's you know, another ½ millimeter or so down here, which I don't think looks as good, but it might be a sacrifice that I have to make. I might have to move this whole section down so it slides straight. If so, it's a small compromise. It would mean that I can fix all of the issues that I would potentially have with this, because I could just run this bit out. So basically I could get rid of this cutout here and run that straight. Delete. Error deleting. Okay. I believe this bit was one of the last bits I did, so I may well be able to undo a few pieces here. I've still got these cutting tools. Actually, it should be pretty easy. Okay, so I've got the cutting tool for that. There, that's the key bit. If I've got those, I can reproduce the rest pretty quickly, because it's just a matter of cutting this end off here and then expanding this out to the end. Let's do it quickly and just, I think that'll make life a bit easier. So it's I don't know why I can't just cut these off. Okay. So let's make an offset plane. I'm going to need 2 on here. And then cut that. That's having more downstream changes than I anticipated. Okay, so chamber rear. That for the most part is going to go. The reason I need to do 2 is because I'm going to need to get rid of this bottom part here, but I might just be able to do this and I can do it in 1 minute. So I don't have to extend the bottom out separately. Yeah, okay, right, that'll make life easier, great. So then get rid of that plane, take here, I'm going to need to extend it back to where that previous piece ended, which is that far. Okay. Why does it look weird? Oh, it's because it's got a chrome texture on it. At least this means I will forego a couple of the other issues I could potentially have had by doing it this way. Also, this cutaway here is because at the front it seems to look like this, whereas at the back it's got this double bar thing. If you look at the reference images on here, you see at the side it looks like that, so I've got this cutout panel that recesses in, this round bit, the hole, and that, so that's all this. And then when you see it from the top, see, this is why it's important to get lots of images. You can see there it looks like 2 bars, so there's a hole going straight through. So that's what I've tried to replicate here. Like I said, the sacrifice that is going to mean, get rid of that, delete, I'll just remove that. Actually, no, let's keep it for now, even if I'm not using it. So the one sacrifice this is going to mean is that that piece there is going to look lower. It's not going to be as high, and I'm going to have to cut off this piece here and then re-pull it out. Again, that's not a big deal. Just that has a distance of 8. So I'm just going to cut this piece off. Oh, let's cut pretty much the entire thing off. Not what I'd anticipated. Okay. Vascular wabbit. There's that strange room again. Oh, this always freaks me out, the strange reflection room. So the offset plane has to go backwards by 8. So split this side to begin with. And then the other side. Same one. So I should have various pieces now. That one needs to go. And that one needs to go. And then just join the front and back pieces back together. So we've got main chamber. This is the one on this side closest to me, which I always call left. So left is if you're facing it a gun forwards, it's the left hand side. So I always do my left and right. Some people do front and back because of obviously just the orientation of the gun. Those people are wrong. And then these pits both need to be extended out by 8. And pretty sure this side doesn't have that. So why is this here? Why is this here? That should be like that. But it's not straight. This is curiouser and curiouser. Yeah, because that cutback is only on one side. But that isn't, that's a flat panel. Oh, it's because this is curved. Okay, right, so I basically need to get rid of that, which will give me a flat piece. Can't delete the face. Compute failed. Right. Okay, so I can do this a few ways. I can cut a piece off here and extend it forwards to the edge. That would work, but ooh. Also, they've cut in too far. Also, this needs a fillet of, I believe it was 2. Yeah. So that's this side. That's fine, other than this over extruded cutaway, but I can fix that afterwards. This really needs to be filled in. Just debating the best way of doing this. Cut here, expand this forwards, rejoin these. Cut here, cut there. Ugh, yeah. It's going to be a case of cutting a few things out to get the shape I want, unless I can take a cross section of that, which I should be able to. I just can't for the life of me think how to do it. Hold up. Oh no, because it's, you can't just expand that. But what I can do is this. This will be the easiest way of doing it. Let's add in another offset plane back here somewhere where it's not going to have much interaction with anything else. Modify, split body here on that plane. Don't extend the tool. Oh, I guess we've got no choice. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is rejoin these bits together before I forget about it. That one and that one. Join them back. Cool. This is now a separate piece, and I can take basically just this section here. Go away, plane. Nobody wants you. That's a kooky line. And then just join those. Problem over. Put this back bit back in now. Join these back together. Chamber rear 1. Chamber rear. And then slide break. That's the one I'm not using. Unused. So that's what this now looks like. So it's a little bit lower, it doesn't quite have that pop upwards, but I think it'll be fine as long as I can get the lines cut into it decently and the 9mm showing on this side, and the pattern I just need to put back into the top, but that won't be difficult. Where's chamber main right? Chamber main left. Oh, I inadvertently joined the two holes together again. What's this piece now? Okay, chamber front. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Because these are all different sections because based of how they're going to be created in the final piece. Okay, so that's fine. I'll just leave that for now. And take the two cutting tools, which I still have in here. There and there. Nope. 108. Do I not have it on the other side? Okay, so 108. I want to duplicate. So this is the tool I use to cut out the lines because they go around, but as far as I can tell, they don't go across the top, so they just go away and then like fade in. So I made this cutting tool, which I drew on the side, and then used a pipe, so creating a pipe, which then attached to the things and allowed them to be cut out. So if I take that, create a mirror of it on the other side. Please. Right. Mirror plane is the middle. Then there should be, because of the way I did the cut out downwards, there should be an obvious point of how far down this is supposed to move. For example, it's 2, not 12, it's 2. Because you can see at -2, it's all the way in, but it starts to come out. 1.9, maybe do it a little bit less, and then that one seems to be sticking a little further out. Oh no, they're both doing it. Okay, all good. Take this, take these, cut them using it, keep them though. I want to do the 9mm back on the side. It's going to have to be shifted ever so slightly up, but that's okay. So creating a text sketch. I should have the previous sketch that I used, which I can then just shift slightly. And do one of the more recent ones. There are almost 200 sketches now. There we go. There it is, 9mm. So when I obviously put this on, the other layer was available, which now isn't. Why is it attached to that? It's attached to that point. So if I create another one, it's not attached to that point then. So about as far as I can go without losing it. Delete that one. Start my sketch, and the other thing will draw itself back in. Extrude that minus 0.6. I want it to be about as small as I can get it while still ensuring that the whole thing's cut in. So obviously I have to consider the curve. Oh, okay, I don't really have to consider the curve. So usually you want these about 0.2, 0.4, not very deep at all. Because the more of these details you put in, the more it causes your computer to whir. Okay, so that's okay. I'm alright with that. And then this is a much easier motion, which will make the next part simpler. There's one that's a little bit I've just got to add onto the back here. So there's a pattern that's cut out into it. I believe it's about 14. 16. I knew it was in that ballpark. And it was 2.5 each side on the back. Or is it the front? Which side's larger? There. The front is larger. Okay. That's why that felt wrong. So it was 1 out on the back. No, it wasn't. .5. Three, 3.5. Trying to remember what numbers I used. Yeah, 3 is fine. One millimeter in. Booyah. Right, slide, redone. That's good. Now we can get to the bit I actually wanted to get to today, which is splitting this thing over here. Is that righty? Yeah. Left to the other right. Let's get rid of lefty for now, right? So this is what we have to work with. This is our shape. You can see all the cutaways, and I need to figure out how to do a few things. 1, attach the springs. 2, attach a break point in the middle. That's an interesting point. So, because I need it in the middle, it means that there has to be a solid bit that runs underneath the bottom of this, so it can't be open bottomed. as it is. It needs to have a solid bottom. Sensible chuckles only. But also I do want this thing here to exist. At least it doesn't have to come out this far. This is the rail where the bullet sits. So I've decided already this needs to go out 25 millimeters, and at that point it will lock. Maybe a couple more, because it does roughly line up with that. 26 is fine. Okay, so that's the locked point. So if I say that my piece has to be around, my spring's around here, my pivot point is around here, with the thing that the trigger pushes up here, because these all have knock-on effects. These all define how far the trigger can move, because where it tops out defines my range for the trigger. So what I'm going to have to do is figure out A, at which point along here do I want the thing that pushes upward to go. B, where the pivot has to, well, how far the top nubbin of that is, if you were. C, where that pivot then goes in order to have the full range of motion between the two. So there's a few kind of like physics puzzles, I guess. They're engineering puzzles, which is fine, because I enjoy those. So let's say this thing here is going to be probably a fair bit shorter. It's probably going to be closer to here. It's a 9mm bullet, right? Here we can see the bullet. How big is a 9mm bullet? Okay, so it looks like it's one of those shape ones. Pretty standard bullet. Oh, so it's an inch, is it? So you see these are all in bloody that's a lot of numbers. Okay, so that long, 20, so it's an inch, right? I'm going to create a very, very quick bullet housing. I'm not going to model it fully up, but I'm going to create a cylinder which can act as my fake bullet, which will give me a bit more feel of how I want to do it. So let's, on this plane here, create a circle in the center of that. That should be 9.2, yeah. So 9. Extrude that by 2.54. 25.4. And if I just crudely fillet this, okay, bullet done. It's a placeholder. When I actually come to do this, I will be doing proper bullets, but this will work in the meantime. Bullets. Create component. So if we shimmy the bullet back, that's as I show it. Let's have a look at that how does a gun work thing again. First to work. Now when it loads it up, see that fully chambers it, but it is underneath the back. Guns are clever. I mean, I can kind of, yeah, I can kind of see where people get their fascination for bullets, for guns from. So, if this sits in, I want to just be able to see it though when you open it up, because pulling back that there shows it underneath. So let's say it's going to live about there. Give it my chamber rear, which means my thing that the bullet sits on, which needs a bit more cutaway. Looks like it comes upwards here. Now why does it do that? .2 is the original chamber width I cut out. Oh yeah, so let's just hide the bullet so I don't do anything to the bullet. You should just ensure that the cutout along here is all even. So I'll do it on both sides, obviously. Make sure it's just cutting, okay, muzzle, chamber, chamber. What's the third chamber? Oh, it's this piece. Okay. My computer is making lots of whirring noises as it very much enjoys being pushed. Okay. Mix the bullet back in. Will you see the head of the bullet there? Yes, when it's further, when the curve is done correctly. Good. So take away lefty. Means now I can move this back to the point where it's going to hit the bullet. Back. Let's give it a little bit of space. 16.5. Just while I've got that number in my head, duplicate that on the other side. And so that means when the rear is in here, if I then close it again, moves back by 26. This point here and back can be closed, and then that can give me a purchase point on the bottom by which the rest will adhere, which will make probably more sense in a second. So I want to draw on this inside edge. Slider rear. Let's just reduce the opacity so I can see through it. make it 15 long. Across there, and I'm going to go across there, which should give me all of this. So, go away bullet, that piece there, this piece I want. So if I join that, give me a block along the bottom. Good. Let's bring it back to 100 just while I check a few things out. My big question is how is this going to affect printing? Or less, printing is not so much the issue, the casting is the issue. Because if I have it up that way and poured, that won't come out. See, I don't think that shape that I've just created there is resin castable. Which is a problem, obviously. It needs to be resin castable. I already am aware that, hold up. Something is, oh, fucking hell. I didn't realise the brake was a separate part. I was like, why is there not a space between the two? I had a mini freak out, but it's fine. If I can't, currently this can be resin cast by being poured with this as the open top end and a single cylinder, and the whole thing will pull out vertically. That'll work, and then the bottom piece here is a separate piece, so these bits will basically extend and these bits will glue in. That's fine. But I can't do that with this piece in. So what I'm going to have to do is have this, the catch, be on one of these edges, which means one of the side pieces will have something recessed in it along one side, which shouldn't be a problem so long as it doesn't go too close to the edge. Let's bring back in the main left. I mean, it's going to be, yeah, it's going to be at least 3 or 4 mil from the edge, which means it should be fine. One other thing I've got to watch is this. So this is going to be a working mechanism to drop the, yes, I've just thought as well how to do the mechanism that drops the, or have I? Yes, I have. Mechanism that drops the clip as well. So that has to be considered as well. So when you push it forwards, the clip drops. And I think what I'm going to have to do for that is have a pivot that runs down here, which then pushes into the back. And when you push this forwards, it lifts it up and the clip falls down with gravity. So if I'm going to put this in one side, I need to make sure that the mechanism that the trigger fires it only has to be wide. It doesn't have to be built over to one side. It's a wider piece, right? Okay. This is fine. This is figuring out these little intricacies. What I'm going to do now then is put the trigger in, because the trigger's part one. What does my trigger look like? So I actually suspect that's a two-part thing. So you get on some triggers, you get one part that, well, it's just like a safety thing. For now, I think I'm just going to put in this piece, this top piece, because then I can. Unfortunately, a trigger discipline's good, which means she's covered all the time. I'm just going to flick through my other reference photos and see if I've got any others. I initially thought that that yellow thing there was part of the gun, which was going to be a problem to get lights in there, but I've now realised actually it was just the angle. See, it's got that. It does have two layers to it. These are all renders. Okay. Stop dicking about. So it's roughly at the front. Shift this over to the side and just pop that over here. Pop this here so I can see it all in one go. So this is going to be my pivot. This is the point on which the gun revolves. And you'll be able to see some interesting stuff we'll get to do in Fusion shortly, is actually attach pivot points to certain things so things lock their movement together. And by locking that movement together, you allow things to rotate around one another, so you can actually see where things will move to. So I can say if I want the trigger to move back to a maximum of this point, which we'll find in a moment, then that gives me a point by which the next part of the mechanism has to be figured out. So starts literally just before this line here, and my hole that runs through here is actually smaller than the hole on the outside. See, the hole on the outside there is larger because it'll be kind of riveted as it goes through, so just need to account for that. Hold up, no, I've seen that's two lines, not one. Come on, computer. No one wants to sit and watch you spin. Try again. Let's get them down roughly, then I can play with them afterwards. not sure that it actually comes behind this point here. I think it's actually further back here. Yeah, that looks a bit more like it. So some of these things have got locked constraints. We just have to remove those. More gives me more space here. So this bit here doesn't make a lot of sense to me unless this is intending to hit the back, but I don't like the idea of that. But generally speaking, that looks, I'd say, pretty close. So now, need to go around this pivot point. And up here, there'll be something that needs to go upwards. So I'm going to draw it in roughly. I'm going to say that. Okay. If I think about it, when it moves up to its extreme, you want it at that point to be straight. Let's get rid of those. I don't want any of these constraints. I want to be able to just play with this however I feel like it. So my initial thought is this is too high. It needs to be more like here. The straighter out you bring this, because of the way the point is here, the more movement you get, which could be good, but you don't want to have it too much, because otherwise the thing will just go too far. Problem when you start to get such a complex model. Actually, you could hook under. Bearing in mind, my other piece is going to have to be around here. No, this will be fine. Okay. Slightly down on this edge. Okay. So if that was my piece, when you turn this in, this will move upwards, which can push whatever's here and lift up here. No, it needs to pull it down. It needs to pull it down, that's right. So when you pull this up, this will pull down. Because my other piece is going to be in here, which is then going to go out and trap these edges, in theory. going to start then by giving this thing some width. So I'm just going to get rid of my reference image for now. All the extra bits that come off this I will figure out as I go. So if I give it a width of 2.5, symmetrically that gives it a full width of 5mm. Again, let's go back to our references. Again, hard to tell, but I guess most are about that. I think my Ace of Spades one is about that. In fact, I can quickly look and see how wide was the Ace of Spades one. Oh, and it's just cut, so womp womp. Womp womp. .2. Okay, so yeah, about 5. So I'll do that. So symmetric 2.6. Yeah, I mean this could be a new body. Maybe even a little bit wider, 3. I mean, it's a futuristic space gun. Yeah, 3. New component, because these are going to have to move around one another, so they definitely need to be different components so you can more easily lock things to one another. Good. Now what I need to do is use this hole. Can I just extrude straight from that? No. I've got a sketch for this somewhere, but fuck knows where it is, so I'm just going to create a new one here, which is the same width, 1.4. And take the left out again. Just slap that through the trigger. It should only be cutting body 1 component. Next. I've gone all the way through, yeah. Okay, so it's part 1 of my trigger in there. It's going to be a couple of interesting things, like figuring out when you basically take the 2 extremes of its movement and then cut around it twice, join the 2 parts together, and that gives you the space that you need to leave inside the gun itself in order to house its movement, which we'll get to in a second. So then I need to bring in both the bodies, left and right. I want to use that sketch that I literally just had. Extrude that through to the opposite side there, and again create a new component. I know, What is it? Cool, there's 2 new components. So this one, which is trigger. This one, which is trigger pivot. This is where things are going to get interesting. Or more interesting. What I'm going to do now is just hide the trigger, and I'm going to lock these 2 components together. So I'm going to start by taking this one, and just to make sure it doesn't move anywhere, apparently I'm going to undo all that. Oh, can you only do that with? Okay, I thought you could fix. Apparently that only applies. What is it, Tilly? What is it? It's a little Tilly cat. Hey Tilly, you coming to say hello? You just want to sit on my knee, don't you? I know what you like. Okay, so anyway, we're going to do the construct. No, what am I doing? Assemble, right, joint. I'm going to assemble a joint between, let's just hide the trigger pivot for now, between this pivot point and the trigger pivot that is within it. There you go. They are now a rigid fixed, so they're not going to move. So they're now fixed to one another, which is good. So if you move, even though they're completely different components, if you move one, where's my movement controls gone? If you move one, they should move together, but I haven't. Well, something's gone wrong there then. Try again. Modify. No. Assemble. Built as joint. What's that? Positions relative to one another and defines their relative motion. Components maintain their current position. As built joint. Positions components relative to one another and defines their relative motion. So how's that different to a joint? I'm going to try this. I haven't tried this tool before. So what I really want to do is create a chamber and a trigger pivot. It's a rigid type. So does this have? Yeah, okay. So that is now still a separate piece. Okay, and if I move that, it still doesn't move with it. Curiouser and curiouser. So the outside edge of that is 1. The inside of that is another. Usually when that shake happens, that is the sign that the 2 things are locked together. I mean, I'm not going to be moving it, so it doesn't really matter, but it's more of a information finding mission sometimes. You know what? Fuck it. It's not going anywhere, and it's not imperative to this next step. The bit that is important is the trigger bit, and having this do what I want. So The reason I wanted to lock this down is it would stop this having any chance of moving. Sometimes it does something weird where it pushes in and out, which you may see now. So I'm going to create a joint between this. It's going to be a revolution type joint based on the inside of that cylinder and the outside of this. No, not having it. There. See how it does that? Okay. Now, why that thing just moves over to the side, I don't know. But it does that. I'm going to see if I can find out why it does it and stop it doing it. Because the fact that I knew it was going to happen means that it's a mistake. Or you would think it was a mistake. So I want component 1 to be this tube, component 2 to be the inside of there, and them to be revolt. So that's done it the wrong way round. Okay, so that's fine. So I want this one to be the inside of the tube. So part 1 is the thing that moves. This. Part 2 is the thing that is static. This. And that's the midpoint. So notice that scrolled back to the midpoint of it there. Okay, that's fine. So if I undo that, then select it again, not at the midpoint, but at this end point. Does it scroll to? See that? I don't know why it does that. And it seems to move. That's center, which means it's exactly centered. Three? No. Which one of these planes is it? I guess you're the magic one. So I made it 3 wide, so that should shift it back into the middle. It's not the ideal way of doing that, but here we are. And that now gives you a thing here which you can play with. And this is the point of doing this. So when it's at 0, it's here. And kind of like you can define how much movement you want on the trigger. And when you've defined how much movement you want, you can then say, right, well, this is where the top of this is going to be. So that's it, it's fully pushed up position. So from here, I can make some adjustments. So I think I want to cut away this bit a bit. Capture it in the new position. So I want to cut off this piece a bit, so it's more like that. Okay, that's good. So if this is extreme 1, now I'm going to draw on this half. It needs to have what's going to be the thing that stops it from going any higher. That point there, for starters. So if we draw around there, that means that part of the trigger will hit there. In fact, can we go all the way up? We can go, no, we can go a bit further. Just give us a heavier surface to hit against. Obviously when this moves back down, to there. Okay, so this is really as high as we can go. And by placing the bottom line across here, it will define the endpoint by which the move it back to 0. Okay. So I need to give it a bit more, give it a little bit of space. Everything is snapping to everything, and it's just pisses me off. There. Okay. Up to 15. Down to there. So it needs to go from here to here. Make sure I've got, as you go, just kind of like moving things as you go to make sure you don't need space where you haven't left it. See, that moves away from there, so that's fine. So this is where the next part's going to start coming in. So 15. Oh. Why will you not allow me to set you at 15? So now with that up, if you start to think about the next piece now having been pushed up here around its pivot down here, I'm just going to need to make sure that this is cut out as well as this, and then we can just go around the edge of here. I don't know why it's resetting my rotations, but have to jump in and out of the sketch. Bit of a pain, but I'm getting there. And it's fucking undone it again. Okay, so it's here. Let's just go about there. Okay, so come in a bit closer, but you know, there's no need to really. It's got this large piece here which is going to be stopping where the trigger comes down. Okay, good. So that's where the trigger housing bit's going to be, which is part 1. So what I'm going to do is skip that. So sketch, and we need to cut this bit away. Might need to do a couple of joining lines. Not sure if that's complete. Mainly this one at the bottom I think's off. I think that's a real line. Okay. So my trigger is a little bit of space either side, not a lot. 2mm total should be more than enough. So what I'm going to do here is extrude this. I'm just going to bring the other side back in so it's done on both sides at the same time, and extrude it by 3.2 symmetrically. If I just check that that looks fine. If you give it too much, you're going to wobble left and right, which you don't want. So there's the start of how that's going to fit inside there. As we can see, 15 back to 0, and it hits the two ends. So what's going to cause this to come back down? It's going to be the pressure of the same spring, which also pushes up this catch. Neither of them need to be particularly strong. We just need to be enough to push it back. Something like a 4 or 5 millimeter wide spring, 20 millimeters long. It's a pretty standard one I use in guns. I'll have more than enough pressure to do what I want. So, part 2 is a combination of create the piece that's going to run across here and figure out how the spring goes in. It's not going to be that difficult. The one thing I want to watch is this. So I've got a feeling I'm going to interact with this or impede on it. It might just be something I have to live with. Unless I can take this a fair bit higher than I anticipated. I really want to. It's okay because this thing can actually be put in the side, and it only needs to be in one side. It's only on this side. Yeah, so they won't be alongside each other anyway, so it won't be a problem. So I just do this as I need to do it. Right, so creating a new one, roughly speaking, it's going to have a piece here, a piece here, and a pivot in the middle. The only time, and then when you're doing rotational dynamics, if you have the pivot in the middle, the same amount of force will be applied on each side. So if you move up a centimetre on the right, you're going to go down a centimetre on the left. When I raise this up here, the level of complexity for this is starting to get a bit much for my humble old Mac. I get that distance from there to there only gives me a few mil difference here, which makes me think I might just want to reduce this edge slightly. Stop sketch. It's just going to give me a couple more millimeters. And I'm going to make it flat at this point. And then just take off this bit. That is not that line I've just created. Stop sketch. Okay, good. Okay, so this is my new slightly adjusted shape based on the changes I'm aware are coming. This gives me a little bit bigger distance, and by having a bigger distance it means I can push down with more distance without having to offset the point too far from the middle, because the further you offset the point from the middle, the harder the pressure is. If you imagine you've got a long stick with a pivot at one end, you have to put a lot more pressure on there. It's just rotational pivot dynamics. Hey there, Prince Buddy. How you doing? Sorry, I'm not really checking the chat a lot right at the second. I've just got a million different thoughts going on here. So that's where the trigger is, and now I know I have this much distance as it moves, which is the same amount of distance that will come down for my catch. Now, as we said earlier, I know this thing is going to be moving 25 millimeters when it catches. No, sorry, 26. I updated it. So that's the point where it needs to catch. So let's say I'm going to put the other end in about here. I'll start by drawing the piece that's going to be doing the catching. I want to keep this piece nice and simple, really. So at the point where it's up is the point where this one's down. So I need to draw this in its utmost position, because otherwise it'll be trickier. So let's get rid of that. Hold up. I was going to say it's because it reverted to my previous sketch, which I don't want it to do. I'm in the middle, so I can just use that. And it'll still work fine. But we'll try to attach to all these things now. Just try one more thing. Yeah, because whatever I do here is going to revert because it thinks it's in the previous state. Unless I can remove, which sketch is it? That one. Maybe that's it. Maybe I'm actually inadvertently clicking on it. Yeah, okay. So I was actually loading a previous sketch, so the previous object state was coming back in. So I now know this is my height that I've got to play with. That distance there. Distance is about 4.3. So 4.5 millimeters. So over here where the catch is going to be, go up about 4.5. I don't think I need to go that far. I think 3 for the actual piece. And just give it a good width so it's pretty strong, because obviously this is going to be a weak point. And then just go, oh, might as well make it a simple shape to print. Right angles and whatnot. And then I'm going to come down another 3. And then I'll come across. So it's currently in the locked position, so the spring will be pushing it up, and this one will be at its lowest point on this side. That's the important thing. So while this is over here, this one's at its lowest point, and we know it has a push distance of about 4 mil, but I only need to drop it 3. So if I give it like 4.5, remove my constraints because I can play with this. But it needs to be at a slight angle. Thinking about it. Why is it not allowing me to do that? Oh, we made it 4.9. Oh. Stops giving me the total length. Okay, there we go. And connect those 2 points. I haven't added the extra in. There you go. I'm gonna haphazardly draw something in for a second. I just want to make sure that I'm away from a few things sufficiently. So that being at that angle is going to be a problem because it doesn't want to push up vertically. It's going to want to push up at a slight angle, which is fine. We can work with that as soon as we get rid of those. Just get rid of them because they're two parts, and if they're two parts, they're just going to be not going to want to move. And then if I get rid of all those, get rid of that, I'll make sense in a second. That's a single piece. That is a single piece. Don't lock the parallel between those, but do lock the parallel between that and that. Parallel. And then hopefully I can just move this one over. So it's a bit more slant. No. Something's constraining it. Okay, screw ya. The problem if it's facing backwards is the spring pressure is going to be facing this way, which will mean the pressure to pull downwards is more difficult unless it's tapered. And if it's too untapered, then the pressure of the spring pulling backwards could potentially push down the thing against the trigger. This is a balancing act. With a lot of maths. A lot more than I ever anticipate when I do these things, but there we go. Right. So now I can draw this in a bit better. Right angle. Where are you? There we go. Oh, that didn't right angle. So keeping things at right angles keeps just the printing a little bit easier. That's not a right angle, is it? No, you know what? It's okay. The old printer can handle it. It's not a big deal. What's a big deal is this bit here needs to come lower. For two reasons. One, this thing is going to be the thing that pushes the trigger down and holds it in place, stops it from rattling about. Subsequently, I should probably get rid of these right angle alignments. And instead bring this one down. That's weird. Expect that. So this width between these 2 points, I just want to make sure it's thick enough to house a relatively decent 3.6. Just going to be a small metal bar. 3.6. So say it's a 2mm thing. That'll only give me a 0.8mm on either side. So I actually want to make the housing bit here a bit bigger. Which I can just extend this a bit. Actually, it might be quite cool if you can actually see a part of it through the top. I was eyeballing the middle, and I've just realised I should not be eyeballing the middle. It should be actually slightly left of the middle, so that the smaller movement here results in a larger movement here. So the push down should be quicker. So if I sketch between those 2 points, I can find out the middle is here, because it grabs the middle. So I'm going to go just left of that. Not much though. I'm going to create where the middle point is going to be. So it's going to be a 2mm metal bar. So this is going to have a 2.2 is probably enough of a tolerance, 0.2 of a millimeter. But I'm going to make it 0.4, just give me that extra little bit of leeway. And then also around that, I'm going to make a bigger piece. 7, 6. Can I? Yeah, just about fit it in underneath there. But then, no, fuck it, let's go 8. The reason I say fuck it, let's go 8, is that then I can cut away this top little bit here, and you just see a little bit of it through the top, which would be quite cool. So now all these pieces come together, excluding the hole. And I need to start by making it so it just fills the middle piece. It doesn't need to be as wide as the trigger, because you're not going to see it. Well, that's way too wide. So this again needs to be a new component. That's the new component. So at this point, it's good, but it doesn't hit the outer bits of these. So what I need to do is at the top of this, hide the rear, top of this. Is create this new body here, which comes actually a tiny bit past this. What does it need to get there? Yeah, so 8, just like the smallest amount past that. And then create another one on the other side. So create a mirror of this piece on the center plane. And then join the three of them together. So this joins those two. So that is it currently in its locked position. I want it though so that when it is in its locked position, this piece here is actually slightly forwards, not slightly back. The reasons for that will become more apparent. It's just to aid the slide of it downwards, basically. There's no great secret behind it. Stop the sketch. It's not a real sketch. I mean, it's a real sketch, but so this body is whatever new body we've got up here. What body's that? That body. Oh, and that body. Oh, I've kept the tools. I didn't need to keep the tools. It's just doesn't matter. There we go. So I'm going to start by this new component is the I'm just going to cut it out first. Just way too far. Just cut whatever body one is. It's not the chamber, it's not the slide rail. Okay. Let's call it trigger seesaw. See what I mean about you'd be able to see this through here a bit. Then I need to create pivot point number 2, which is going to be created here. Actually, I need to do the cutaway on here first. What am I talking about? No, I need to do pivot point first. I need to do the pivot point first because then I need to be able to rotate around this point and see the extremes of this cutaway. Go back into here. It doesn't want me to create a circle on that plane. Why not? Okay, stop sketch. Let's just go into a previous sketch. Okay, so create a new thing on the inside of this. I can't remember how wide I made it. 4. Okay. New component. Trigger seesaw pivot. And I want to hide the right. Extrude this out by 3. Yeah, that's fine. And same on the other side. So by 3, 3 and 4, that means it's this 1 centimeter pivot piece, which is good. So now I need chamber right back. Okay. Chamber right. And I need to actually hide chamber right. Draw a circle on the end of here. So that's 2.4. So when I'm doing pieces that lock together, there'll never be more than a 0.2mm tolerance between the two of them. Let's just get rid of this seesaw pivot. We can just hide the trigger seesaw. So I've got my 3mm that it's dug in, plus the 4mm of 7, plus the other one which is 10, so that's my 10mm. And then we're going to put the two chambers back in and use that to cut out 10mm as a hole between the two. Get rid of the left. So when I'm building this, that's going to be the part of the hole. Some of this will be cut out as well for the rotation bit, but that'll be part of it going in there. I probably want to make it a tiny bit deeper, but I'll come back to that when I get that far in. Let's get rid of this sketch. Bring back in my seesaw and my pivot. Get rid of the seesaw, and again I need to lock these two pieces together, but as we saw earlier I don't actually have to do that, so I'm not going to do that. Instead I'm just going to create this seesaw joint, manage joint. First is the thing that is moving. I can never remember which way around it is. It's the thing that's moving, and that is the thing that's static. Whee! Moves back by, it must be -2. Does it shift one edge? For some reason it shifts one edge to the center, is what it seems to do. Okay. Now these two bits are joined. Now these two bits don't actually physically interact, because there's no real joint between them other than saying one can't move the other. But what I can do is say, right, this is going to be 15 degrees, so that's where that one's going to stop, and then based on that this one will be there. So when that's pushed upwards, and that is now out the bottom, which is good. So this is, oh yeah, this is in the middle, whereas he's coming to the side, so that's not a problem. Now that isn't a lot of gap at the top here, so I'm going to do is actually cut a bit off the top of this. We'll capture the new positions, because this needs to make sure it's like out of the way, else I'm just not going to be able to pull the bloody thing down. So cut out with that. I need to cut the trigger out of the chamber. That sits down. So that sits down and it will have shifted back. So then we move it back. Now it's 9.3. When it goes back up to 0, that will stop there. So I can use that information to cut out these. cut it all the way through, but then just select the only bit that I wanted to cut. So I don't want it to cut the chamber or the trigger thing, I just want it to cut the slider. So now when this is pulled back to here, the pressure of the spring, which is now going to go in, will push that upwards and subsequently force this trigger down to here. So that's kind of its default state. Okay, problem. I've noticed a problem. Let's move this back to here, 26. At this point, this will be here because the trigger would have pulled it upwards. Which means there's no pressure being faced downwards on the trigger. Because there's no pressure being put downwards on the trigger will be floppy. Don't want that. Can I just, if I just extend that out, I mean this fires further, but it also moves further. Isn't necessarily a problem. So now that would be the default state. Then when this comes backwards, this is moved backwards, and when it goes past there at 26 mil, the pressure of the mag spring, which is about to go in here, push this up to there, which it currently cannot do because now the trigger's in the way. This is why I said this is a complex problem, and it's surprising. So basically it needs to be able to move upwards. How do I do this without multiple springs? Hey Calico, yeah, it is going well. It's a nice model, this thing, but currently trying to figure out which problem. I want there's a thing I use at work, it's called the rubber duck technique, and if you can explain a problem, a complex problem, to a rubber duck, then sometimes it'll make you think of different things. So that's roughly what I'm going to do. So the problem is when this is at its catched position, this needs to be lower, but it also needs to be at its lowest point. In order to push it back down when it's not in the catched position. Bear with me. So here is a 9mm pistol. It has a lot of similar ideas to what I'm putting in here, and there's movement before it fires. Just trying to get a look at how some of the inner workings are. See if I can figure out how this mechanism works. Okay, so it's got a pressure thing there. Oh, that's for the... Oh. Okay, so the clip release is really clever. Basically you push this button in on one side and it moves a clip that obviously grabs. There's a little mark here in the side of the clip, and as it goes past this thing here, it grabs it on the inside, and then pushing that allows it to drop. That's clever. That's something I can incorporate. Or something similar. That's that. The trigger is rotating there. Okay, so this uses a little spring here which pushes the trigger itself back down. It's like it's directly attached to the trigger, but it's also attached to a lock piece at the back. Okay. I'm going to keep that apart for now. So one of the advantages of having airsoft guns about is you can actually refer to things. So I was planning on pushing this up with a spring. That might not be the best idea. What might be better is to pull this down with a spring, because if that's being pulled down, then this bit's floppy. Doesn't matter that it's floppy. I guess there's nothing stopping me having both. I could have a little spring here and a little spring here, one that pulls down the trigger into its default state and one that pushes up the lock. It seems over engineering for something I feel like I should be able to do with a single. Piece. I just need to make sure I can get the right expansion springs and that I can connect them in a way that is going to be strong enough in a resin piece, because this is a metal gun, so obviously it's a lot of this bloody art is staring at things and figuring out how to do them. What I'm going to start by doing is undoing that extrusion there that I did. So I feel that bit there is fine as is. It's just this issue that I want to do, and by giving it its own spring, I guess it'll be decently strong. There are a couple of ways I can do this. I can either use, the reason I try to avoid using expansion strings, so strings that when you pull, they pull back together, is that when you're using a resin model, it has to hook through something. So you'd have to make a really small hole for the spring to put through, and it puts pressure on it that it maybe can't handle. Whereas an expansion spring just pushes outwards. So I need to push this downwards, and I can't do it from this side because I don't have the angle. So I'm going to have to do it from this side, which means filling in this bit here so that I don't have a lot of unnecessary spring like flopping about. So that's part one. Capture. Okay, so I'm going to bring it back to the other chamber. No, I've got to do it in two halves, haven't I? Expand up to this level. So do that as one, and then use the same. Use the same sketch. So two sides, one of them goes back there, the other one goes here. Nope. So two goes to here. What the dose? Sticking out the other side. I haven't got anywhere near. Yeah, I'm not in the right side at all then. Oh yes, hold up, yes I am. Okay, all good. Cool. So put in, switch back out to here. This is more than 15 degrees currently. No. So then why is that there? Let's take that down. No, it needs to be at 15 because I need to see where I'm cutting. Go to the trigger here. Just 4 wide. Good. Trigger back in. So now at this point it's down to there. And when? So I need another basically keep this down like this. So there'll be a tube and a spring that goes into the trigger here. Then that'll sit pushed up against here with another spring here. So there'll be 2 springs inside this. There'll be 3 total, 4 total, fucking hell, maybe 5. So it's, I mean, this product of it having a lot of moving parts. So then when you push this up, this, let's just go, run through the motion. This moves back. When it hits 26 millimeters, the pressure of this spring moves this up to here, which means then the trigger is loaded. Then when the trigger is pushed up against the force of the spring, this thing will go up to 15 degrees, which push this thing up to here. It should be enough to drag it down. I do want to make that a little bit longer actually, looking at it, so this comes a little bit further away. Just to make sure I've got enough space. Then as that pulls back, the springs will be inside this. We'll then push this back to its default position. Fine. I've got to put the cutaway section around here, which isn't too much of a problem, and then add the 2 spring recesses, and I think that'll be it for the evening. So get rid of you for now because you're not needed. So when this is in its default position at the top, it's pretty much all over then. So I need to consider it on its lower point, but also while I'm up here I might as well do the lower side of this side. And get close to this because I actually want to do a circle bit there because I think it'll look cooler. Capture all the new positions. And then another one at the top. Don't know why I selected that. might be subject to moving, but okay, that covers all the bases. Just do some crude joins at the end. Make sure I've got a complete shape. So let's do the seesaw. Why can I not? So stop the sketch. That's a piece, that's a piece, that's not a piece. I think that thing there is throwing me. One of these lines is a faker. Big fat phony. There it is. Let's just grab all these loose shapes. Maybe cutting away. Now I know it has a width of 4. Span 2 sides, as I said. Oh no, not 2 sides symmetrical. It'll be 2.2. But the only objects I'm going to want to cut are the chamber, so I don't hit the body there, and also the other chamber. So that's those 2 pieces. And I haven't gone too close to this, which is reassuring. Just double check how far down I've come. Okay, so I mean my clip for this is going to be at the bottom edge, so I've still got space here to do other bits. That's good. Then I'm going to need 2 springs, one here and one here. First thing I do is check what size springs I can get hold of easily. So I'm thinking 4mm wide. Can't type. So compression springs is what I really want, so I should actually just filter with that, because otherwise you're going to get these expansion springs as well. 4 to 9mm and 10 to 75mm. Pressure small, that's what I want. So variety of sizes. 15mm is probably going to give me more than enough. 0.5 diameter and 4. So 4 by 15. Cool. So I need to put this in its upward position. And that's the point at which the spring wants to be its most expanded. So let's envisage the spring being from here, and it's going to be 15mm long. That's where my spring's going to be. So I'm going to use that to then cut out a tube. So create a pipe, which is 4mm, well just over 4.2 again. So I've got a little bit of space. Hello. Oh nice. It got pockets and everything.
Well, it had pockets, but it was size 14.
Ooh. And now it is not.
It's a size Maria.
I'm going to get that into a new body. That's the size of my spring for this. The reason I want to make a new body is you see it overlaps a little bit there. I just want to shift it down ever so slightly. Move this body, please. Is it joined to a body? Shouldn't have done. Move. Okay, there we go. If I actually bring it up this way, then it doesn't move as far, but it also doesn't need to compress as much in order to get the same amount of pressure to push it upwards. But this way has more pressure. Okay, there. That's going to be my position. So that's where the spring's going to sit. So then I'm going to use that to cut out of this side. Keep the tool because I need to do it on the other side as well. Barp. Cut out this side. Then I can need to start hiding some of these because I don't need all my sketches and everything open right now. The reason I wanted to hold on to this is because it's easier sometimes if you can buy in bundles. I've got a feeling that this one's going to be too big for the second one, so not a problem. I was going to try and just going to try shifting it over here, but you see, maybe it will be alright. Let's have a look. I'm only moving something, come on. So that's the point at which it needs to stop. Yeah, no, that's going to be too big. Really, I need a thinner. Ooh. Also, I've cut that back too far there. I hadn't considered that. Oh, what a body. E. Slide back in, cut both of those, but don't cut the trigger. Okey doke. Let's go back to the side where I was. So I need to find the other one that goes in here. I mean, I could go down to a 10mm of the same size, but I think a 3mm spring would go better. $3mm. length of 10. So 10 by 3. Oh, that's a little one. 10 by 3. So I'm just going to put a line. I'm going to want it to push basically on that corner. Like that. And again, create the pipe on this thing. This time make it 3.4. And a new body, so I can just, you see obviously it overlaps, so it needs a little bit of an adjustment. One thing to consider is, does this catch on it when it comes down? I think in that direction and position, then yes it would. But fortunately, because it's small enough, ooh, that is not being rotated directly on the plane. Let's use that as my plane. I should be able to push it straight down like that. Now, is this little bit here cut away because that goes into it? I expect it probably is. So I want it to be compressed at this point, so like that. Modify, cut, no, behind that, and that, and cut one from the other. Tool. Okay, no, this bit here is going to be a pain, that's not going to print properly. So what happens if I just cut one from the other and then just remove the leftover space? It's good that this model's almost finished, because this yeah, humble little machine is not having fun anymore. That could risk getting rid of stuff I don't want to get rid of then. Okay, that'll print better. That's good. So same on the other side. Bring in that body. Modify that to that. Keep tool. Get rid of that. E minus 0.3. Then remove the trim. Cool. I believe that will all work as anticipated now. I can obviously do a quick render on this plane, create a spring basically. It's going to go in the wrong direction, I think. No, 4. A 4mm spring. It goes up by 15. Nope. 4 revolutions is 12 usually in these things. Height is 15mm. Section size is 0.5. 0.5, but then you need to discount the actual the width, so it's actually added on the 0.5, so I actually need to reduce this to 3.5, and that's actually what a 4mm wide spring will look like. So create that as a new body, new component, because it needs to go in the render. And that's 15mm or 4 by 15mm spring. And then do the same on here. Create coil on here, there. At this one's 3, so 2.5, but it was only a 0.3 wide, so 2.7. Height is only 10 this time. Section size is 0.3. New body. My only worry is about this sliding to the side, but short, small springs like that are usually pretty firm, so I'm not that worried, to be honest. But there we go. So this is going to be how the full locking mechanism works. Obviously you're not going to see any of it, but when it's actually all together, you'll get a reason I wanted to have that round cutaway. And so you'll get a bit of a glimpse of it here. Ooh, ooh, not thought about that. Chamber. Inside here, this bit. Come on. So that basically needs to go to, not the end, but no, actually I'll go to the end and then go back and mill if I can. No, half a mil. Fine. Yeah, good. Duplicate, hey. I didn't say 180 yet. Okay. 8.3. thought so. Last time I did this other one, I cut fucking half of it off. Oh well, oops a poops. Get rid of that extrude there. There we go. I'm just going to bring the right one back in and do that one again. Because I did a goof. E minus 8.3. This time only cut the chamber, not the bloody trigger. So when you come to assemble this, you'll put I haven't even thought about these. These things have got to wire up to electronics yet. Yeah, fun. So you'll put in the pipes. Basically, I would start by putting this one in, and it will sit all the way back here. And then you put the springs in, and then you put all the second half of it in, and there'll be a few spots where there'll be like little pipes type things, like an IKEA cabinet that come together. It will allow you to just construct it all, and then it should all nicely. Heck, that took a lot of figuring out, but there we go. It looks right, seems to work. I think from a engineering perspective, which is good. There's not a huge amount to go on there. There's the brake at the back. That's what, or at least I'll call it the brake. There's the chamber bit. So I need to move it out of the way here to 26 in order to take a couple of renders, a couple of cheeky quick renders just to show how it works. Put the bullet back in there for good measure. No, I don't like it. Bullet will be gone. Yeah. Well, thanks for everyone who came in and watched. Yeah, that's the mechanics of putting a working trigger mechanism with a lockout slide into a gun. Hope that was useful, and I will be back next time later in the week. See you soon. Avery out.